Let's dive further into the impacts of all this with our next guest, Gina McCarthy. She's a former White House National Climate Advisor and the 13th U.S. EPA Administrator. Gina, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. To get to the heart of the issue, what concerns you the most about the announcements from Trump's EPA?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. You know, the thing that concerns me most is the entire package. Look, we're talking about 31 of some of the most fundamental rules that the agency has moved forward, starting with one that was actually went to the Supreme Court in 2009 about the endangerment finding, which is to recognize the risks of climate change. And you take it from there. What they're trying to do now is to actually translate that into how do I stop the protections that have been so instrumental to keeping people healthy and cleaning our environment. And instead, let's open up the opportunities for fossil fuel companies to spew more pollution in our air and water. They're just looking to shut people out of the process of implementing vital regulations that have really saved innumerable lives and innumerable natural resources.
And as you mentioned, 31 fundamental rules that they're trying to dismantle. Take us back in history for a moment. What was the EPA created to do exactly when President Nixon created it back in 1970?
It was all about just making sure that we take action to protect basically our health and the environment, to protect people in communities all across the country. And we're thinking about things like the Clean Power Plan, which was done back in 2015. And that's all about reducing CO2 emissions from power plants. We know we can do it. We can do it cost effectively. It's all about mercury and air toxic standards, which are spewing of mercury that gets into our fish, into our bodies, and how do we eliminate that? And are there cost effective ways to do that? So you move on, and EPA has always been learning from these experiences, finding ways to lower the costs and actually get much more sophisticated technology so that we could actually do the kind of protections that people need for our health and well-being, but do it in the most cost-effective way possible. And that's what this administration doesn't understand. They want to dismantle that structure and go back to what used to be, but we cannot allow that to happen.
An agency that's really been in place for almost 60 years through so many different administrations. So you brought up the issue of cost. So what do you make of the argument we've heard from the new EPA administrator that these changes are necessary to lower the cost of living for all Americans?
I think the euphemism there is they're really not looking at lowering the cost for all Americans. They're really looking at lowering the cost for fossil fuels. We all know that clean energy is doing much better environmentally, and it's doing much better from a cost perspective to build jobs, to actually help communities be safer and healthier. And that's the most important thing that we need to really focus on, not individual rulemakings that have already shown how good they are in protecting people, but we have to work together to make sure we advance the cleanest energy that we can and maintain the kind of model policies and actions that EPA is known for internationally.
And Gina, one quick question before we go. You spent time there at the EPA. Did you ever envision this happening? So many rules trying to be dismantled. Did you see this coming?
I didn't. My fear is that their idea of reconsideration is to stop implementing all of the 31 rules and regulations that they've already identified. That would be both illegal, but also would take a while, I'm sure, to work their way through the courts. And our health and our security and our safety and our protection of the environment can't afford that kind of time.
Gina, really appreciate your time. Gina McCarthy, the 13th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.